we've spent so much time over the past few years with fitness and tech. And what has that gotten us? A lot of overhyped and misguided stuff. So I think we're going to see a massive growth in the simple and effective offline, simplistic workout approaches and equipments and other things that you're going to see.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. As 2023 draws to a close, this week's podcast is a little bit different. We are joined by two of the industry's most sought-after leaders, Anthony Vennare, successful entrepreneur and founder of Fiit Insider, and Mo Iqbal, founder and CEO of Sweatworks. We take a look back at the fitness industry's flexes and fails of 2023, as well as discussing thoughts, predictions, and future trends we expect to see in 2024. I believe it's a fantastic time to be in the industry. So many things are now possible that we couldn't have dreamt of just a few years ago. I'm also aware it's a very challenging time for many people and businesses as the industry makes an essential transition from an old paradigm to a new one. My wish is that this podcast continues to provide hope through challenging times, inspiration for what's possible, and different perspectives to help make more informed decisions. So thank you for listening today. And if you get any new ideas or insights, please tell someone you know so we can continue to keep these going. Now, please enjoy this week's episode of the Escape Your Limits podcast with Mr. Anthony Vennare and Mr. Mo Iqbal. Anthony, welcome to the Escape Your Limits podcast.
Yeah, great to be here. I appreciate it.
Mo and I frequently bring up your newsletter. You guys have certainly done a great job at staying ahead with what's going on in the industry and predicting what's likely to happen. I was curious, where did that tell us a bit about how that all started?
Yeah, it's funny enough. It started as an email to like 5 friends. My brother and I have always worked in the space, and we just hated the industry from a media perspective because we owned gyms back in the day. We've done pretty much everything you could do in the health and wellness industry. And it was always the same people talking about the same thing. It was always pay to play, which we think a majority of everyone else out there still is. And it was, what about research and data and insights? And what about thoughtfulness on what's happening? And we said, can we be the ones that write that? We like to write. We've had companies in the past. So while we were running another company, just started sending a newsletter. I sent the first issue to 5 friends, and it was just a Gmail of like, hey, I saw this. This was interesting. And then 5 to 50 to 5,000 to 50,000 and so on. It's kind of grown organically to be a thing. And now there's a whole team and there's podcasts and jobs board and all these fun operations. But I think like most things, it was a kind of an organic, like, hey, let's just do this because we think it's fun.
Yeah, I like the way that you approach the information because, as you say, you get a lot of the news from some of the publications, but the way you guys look at it, it seems to come from a slightly different angle. It seems as though it comes from people who really understand business and the world of investing. Is that intentional? And if so, how do you, when you look at some of these stories, how do you approach them and think about how to tell the story in your own particular way?
Yeah, the whole problem with the industry is it's in the media perspective. And how can we say enough to get attention and then run ads and webinars and get paid to promote other people's products? And ours was never, our business model was not advertising. There's a lot that we do, and that lets us be thoughtful. And it's always a matter of what is this and why does it matter to an operator? What if I was a founder doing this, or if somebody else is a founder or an investor or an operator, how can we make this thing be valuable to them? That's the only perspective that we have. And doesn't matter. And sometimes we don't write about stories that some people do, or we pass up on things because it's not valuable. Yes, this company or this app won an award, but what does that matter to you? What's going on? And instead, we're going to write about, last week's was the stress industry and what is around stress and what happens there. Or this week's newsletter was sports tech and how does sports tech connect to fitness and wellness. And it's not just hey, this company did this, or hey, this thing won that. So it's always, can we find, and more importantly, to data and information, studies and reports and trends can we produce and put them out there and really try to put our best foot forward on and our best ideas out there from a information perspective, not really a news perspective.
Yeah. Mo, when did you come across the Fit Insider team?
I think pretty early on, and I'm obviously privileged to be sitting, Matthew, with you and Anthony, because earlier on, I was listening to Escape, your limits podcast, and now I'm actually on the podcast. So that's pretty remarkable in and of itself. And Anthony, you and the whole team over, and Joe, and Fit with your podcast, your newsletters have also been an incredible resource. So I think I just came on by just being in the industry and kind of really respecting your approach towards how you talked about new developments that are happening. And I think you hit the nail right there, because one of the things that inspired me to form Sweatworks, about 11, 12 years ago, was something similar, more from a digital and product standpoint, where you had someone putting out a good product, but it was inaccessible and they weren't really representing digital or innovation in a way that I found to be appropriate. So we started it as a small thing, just like you did. But really glad to have you on. And I'll also add that in the last couple of years, I've had a chance to get to know you on a personal level. We're friends, we're texting. And not only do I text with you, but your Fit Insider news, I think, has got to be one of the most shared links in text message groups, because I get stuff sent to me all the time. So keep up doing the good work. And I'm also excited because we're about to engage on our first, strategy opportunity together. So we'll get to work on something together, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, pumped to be here for both of you, and it's always fun to see people out in the industry and then get to work on projects together like this and some of the stuff you're talking about, Mo. It's cool.
Well, in today's conversation, I wanted to get two of the visionaries really at the end at the end of each year and at the beginning of a new year, people are generally interested in what happened last year, what worked, what didn't work, and what are some of the things that we should look out from the future. And in today's interview, I'd like us to focus on a couple of things. Is the first sort of half of our conversation will be very much in looking back on the last 12 months and giving your own personal perspective on flex or fail. Flex are the success stories that we've seen, and fails are the stories that probably didn't live up to expectations. And we're going to break them down into three sections. The first one is going to be stories from big tech. The second block is going to be around a lot of regular small to medium sized companies and views on that. And then the third section is going to be general trends, and so we'll sort of get each one of your views on subjects within those areas to as we really look back on 2023 to get your own personal perspectives on what you thought happened in this year. And then on from that is predictions for next year. A lot of times, some of these predictions are very, very similar, and it's difficult to understand exactly how people define them, because you can use a particular word like connected health and fitness, but it could, as we find out now, that can mean so many things to so many different people, and it's easy just to sort of stick that up as a category. So what I wanted to do is to get your predictions for the year ahead, but really go into some detail and get your own views about some of the specifics that you feel are going to be things to watch in the year ahead. We're going to start off with the flex and fail in the big tech market, and I'm going to start with Mo, because he's he's someone I learn a lot about. I could barely use the computer before I met Mo, and now I can actually turn it on and off and and search Google. So I'm going to start with Mo to get Mo. What are some of your flex or fails for 2023?
Yeah, so let's kick this off. I'm going to start with the flex. And my flex here is going to be Apple and the innovation and direction that Apple has done in 2023. Look, when Apple, one, from a brand perspective, Apple is a high volume brand with the margins of a luxury product. So they basically are the Louis Vuitton or the Hermes that everyone has. It's become this status symbol, a must-have product, but they continue to retain the premium branding and product as well. You look at something that was launched last year, like the Apple Watch Ultra, followed on by the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which is really launched as this endurance fitness-based product. But a lot of people that I know that have an Apple Watch Ultra have it because it's a status symbol, right? They love having the big watch. They love, having that big screen. I don't think it's transitioned into hardcore endurance athletes yet, but Apple is going in that direction. They have quietly been the biggest aggregator of data compared to anyone else in the market today, but by leveraging Apple Health. So not only are they collecting data from the Apple Watch, which they've opened up several new APIs and toolkits. And we could spend a whole podcast talking about what Apple Watch has done this year and what's coming on next year. They've opened up Apple Health as a central repository. So they've been collecting data now for several years. And that's going to enable them to do a lot of things we'll talk about in the next section here for what they could do for 2024 and years beyond that. So to me, the big flex and big tech has to be Apple.
Excellent. Anthony, what's your flex and fail for 2023?
Yeah, Nike. What Nike's been able to do, I don't know if you would call them a tech company or not, but recently we got to break the news on their studios and the strength equipment and their wellness collective and really transforming. They've always represented athletics and fitness for a lot of people, but now making that jump into being the actual location that people can train, growing deeper with trainers and coaches and the wellness collective as a whole, and then just being something that now people could take home and work out in their gym. And it's just the beginning for them, but I think that their brand and awareness and what they mean to a lot of people as a product mirrored to the interests in the growth in both strength training as a whole and then just the fitness industry. And I think what's happened, we've seen a lot of brands, studios, things grow in the fitness industry that just they can't compete from an actual brand perspective with Nike. The Nike brand means so much to so many people and is so big that the fact that they're doing this is going to have massive impacts long term on the industry and be a real competitor to the people out there. But I do agree with Mo, the same thing, that the opportunity that Apple has, and you see companies now launching new products, and you just know it's not even ever going to be close to what Apple can do. So it's hard to get behind some of those products. Same thing with Nike. When they came into the space and with what they're doing, how are you going to be able to compete with that?
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalog has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalog is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today, or be one of the lucky few to receive a hardbound printed copy straight to your door. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now. With Nike, what do you guys think? Because in some ways, for a brand that is so based in fitness, and if you guys have been in the industry a long time, it seems as though it's almost like they've arrived later to the party. Do you think that that's a case of that they've just been observing it for a long time and they've never really found the position or the timing to come out with something? Because I think for years people have been talking about, well, when are Nike going to do some fitness equipment, and when are Nike going to open some kind of studios or gyms or something like that? So it seems very obvious, but it also seems late. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think they are just it's their business is so big, and for them to make a move that makes them 10 or 20 million or 50 million dollars is completely irrelevant. That doesn't impact them. So they had to be thoughtful and wait for this time to come. And I think with the ups and downs of the fitness industry through COVID, and them now having the leadership around the table and saying, okay, we are doing so much out there, but this is not a $50 million opportunity. This is not a $100 million opportunity. This is $1 billion opportunity. And it finally all kind of stars aligned to show them that is because think about where things were in the industry in 2018 and 19. We weren't talking about major investors backing companies. It was brick and mortar. It was PE. It was pretty basic. Yes, the Whoops and Auras and others were out there, but they had no attention. They weren't in the news. They weren't, some of these companies weren't public. The overall industry was so different only a handful of years ago. And now with all of this industry and data saying, hey, it's only going to get bigger. It's only worth more money. They finally said, okay, we have to make this jump. And I think them, like you said, thinking about this for so long and everyone saying this is such an obvious move, it made it easier for them to kind of finally take action and say, okay, everybody sees it. Now it's time for us to jump.
And it almost kind of makes its way for a future Nike and Apple partnership. I mean, the two already have partnerships in place today, but if you look at the moves that Nike is doing, it's really based on experiential things that you could go, studios that you can go to, stores that you can go to. And they've actually pulled back on digital. So, the Nike Run Club team, as an example, I know they've scaled on that team. They've scaled on a bit of technology. They've outsourced a lot of that kind of work, whereas Apple is going deeper into it. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them both continue to expand in where they do well, Nike being an experiential and in-person activation, and Apple with the focus on data collection and wearables. To see those two come together at some point over the next couple of years. Matthew, do you have any opinions on what you think is a flex or fail for 2023?
Well, mine's going to be a fail, and it's a generalization, but I think the hype around Facebook and the metaverse, I think it's just, in my perception, I think it's just so far in the future, and I think it's a great idea. I think it makes a great marketing story, and I've used some fantastic experiences. I just think it's going to take some time before that really gets some kind of business model that works in the way that it's been sold to me by people that are in the space, saying, why don't you get on board and get involved in a metaverse? Now, my although I don't know too much about it, I think you've got Mo, help me here. Like, there's AR and VR, and is AR the one where you're basically in real life, but you've got some kind of tech support around it? Is that
Yeah,
is that the AR?
it's augmented
Augmented.
reality. Yes, it's augmented reality. Yes, taking in real life with additional support around it. It's very similar to what Apple is doing with their new headset, which is, I think, coming out over the next month or two. VR is virtual reality. That is where you put on the headset. You're in a virtual world. That's the
Right.
difference in the two.
Right. Yeah. So I think I can see the AR working in many different areas if they can figure out the headset and the integration. I just think the VR. I think that personally that'll come a little bit later. So that one will be my fail.
Well, so interesting you brought that up, Matthew. So we actually had our all hands today for December year end, and we did some interesting analysis and kind of looked at, where did we write most of our lines of code and all that. Starting the year, we actually expected AR and VR to be right up there. It ended up with the year being AI, but that was one of the lower ones. So you're spot on with that being a fail. I think a lot of people expected a lot to come out of that. Maybe the technology is not there yet, but I like that one a lot.
I've never known anyone that actually does that. Who's actually doing it as a continual thing? Anyone I've ever talked to or met, and that's always a good indicator. It just seems too against the norm for them to make it a thing anytime soon.
Well, we'll move on to the next section, which is the small to medium size businesses within the industry, and similar perspective on that one. So I'll start with you, Mo. On what do you think has been some flexes or fails on in that particular category?
I'm going to go with the fail, and that's going to be connected fitness. When the year started, a lot of connected fitness companies that we work with, a lot of them were incredibly optimistic that yes, gyms opened up, but we could still have this connected offering at home. And I think the bubble has burst on it. I think we're ending the year now knowing that from a consumer standpoint, hybrid fitness is here. Hybrid fitness is here to stay. But people want a unified experience. They don't want to have these two fragmented experiences. So as people are enjoying their fitness journey, I think the winner here is really in person. The winner here is community. The winner here is at home. In person gyms. If you already have equipment at home, that's now almost become either a supplementary or complementary experience if you can't make it into the gym. Me personally, I train at home, but that's more because of my schedule and having young kids. But whenever I get an opportunity to go on a run with someone or go to the gym and work out with someone, it's just 10x better. So I think the bubble's burst that. And when you look at the stock market and even how these shares have performed this year, one of the worst performing categories in the markets has really been all the connected fitness brands. And I don't see them coming out of that. I think it's kind of settled down. I think people have made their choice. But to me, one of the biggest fails, in this category has to be at-home connected fitness.
Yeah, Anthony, what are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, yeah, it was always a fail in my mind. It never made sense for why anyone was going to do that. It again, it goes back to, I think, uninformed investors and people building something in a space that they just don't know the inner workings of. They don't really know the industry, they don't know the habits in the consumer, and they thought that they were going to completely change it with some quote unquote innovative tech, which just wasn't there. So completely agree with that. And I thought it was a fail 2021 and 2022. And just over and over again, the products were not great. And although I do think some of the companies are like Peloton, massive brand, huge potential. Yeah, they're making some mistakes. I think they can be an up a leader if they made a bunch of changes, and there's some out there, but for some of the companies out there to be valued what they were and to have the sales expectations and product expectations just never made sense to me.
I'll add to that too. I mean, I think two things, right? One is you had a lot of companies that got a ton of capital. I mean, very similar to what's happened to AI today, that are getting a ton of capital with founders who aren't from the industry. And you even had established founders like John Foley Peloton famously saying, or infamously saying, gyms are obsolete at TechCrunch, right? Because this is the way you're going to do fitness. That obviously did not pan out well. But with that said, I do think that we're going to be coming out of this with a couple of really strong established brands in the category that again have good brand equity, have a strong product, and they'll continue to have an offering. They might find new channels, but I agree. I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of new modalities in connected fitness for at home come out in the coming years.
So, Anthony, what's your view on this question?
I think fail as well. And mine is over optimization of wearables. You've seen so many different companies and devices about tracking hydration and optimization and data and HRV and everything else when the average consumer has no idea what that means or what they're going to do with it. And they go and they track it and they use it, and it either stresses them out, becomes too much, or it falls off. You don't need to know a lot of that for, I mean, we talk about the industry so much around where obesity is and inactivity, and some people aren't even walking 3,000 steps. They don't need to know they don't need to track their sleep right now. They're not sleeping. They're drinking Coke before they go to bed. Like there's so much out there that as an industry and how much money and attention was pumped into that was just completely overblown for me, especially this year, because there's a ton of things coming out that are, oh, this new product or this new thing, but I don't see, and honestly, I would bundle CGM in there as well as a whole right now. I think that it's just not a something that consumers are going to latch onto long term because the value isn't there for them. It doesn't mean anything to them right now. And outside of the top 10%, the weekend warriors, the endurance athletes, is people spending time and money and that have that interest that ties on to something that they're actually doing. I don't see it sticking around, and the numbers are there. People are falling off, they're not using them. And it's the same as connected fitness. There was always at home workout equipment. Think of the Gazelle, that one guy with the ponytail doing the Tony Gazelle thing or whatever that was. Like it's always
Bowflex.
been there. Bowflex, they've been there. And from a Fitbit was around, and what was before that, there's always been devices. It's just the attention and money really sped things up, and it just didn't stick with me. And nothing was a clear winner for me. Like I use an Apple Watch clearly because solely because I don't want to miss meetings and it'll tell me I have a meeting coming up. Otherwise, I'd be late to everything. And I like to track my steps because I like to walk every once in a while. But that's it. Same thing for Joe. Same thing for a lot of the coaches and trainers I know. And unless they're working with some crazy athlete or some professional in some way, it's not really integrated into their day to day.
And I think something that we'll be tracking as well is we only have limited real estate, right? Just like when you look at physically on your body, how comfortable are you having on rings and straps and something on your body with the CG? I mean, I think there's a point of where you've hit your limit in how many devices you're going to be putting on it, because just tracking it and getting the things charged and started, that's a lot of effort and and a ton of friction.
Mhm.
Matthew, any thoughts on this category?
Well, you and I have spoke about it a lot, but I'm with you on the this connected fitness. I've probably got some unique insights into the category, but it always what really amazes me as someone who's been in business for quite some time and been out and tried to raise money is that it just seems as though so many people were just seemed to lose all sense of logic when they looked at this sector, because as you said, Anthony, like, how do you put a value on a company? Well, what we do know is we know a lot about the home fitness market because it's been around for a long time. Some would argue it's been around as long, or if not longer, than the commercial space. So we know who the big players are. We know their ability to reach consumers. We understand exercise bikes and treadmills. All that data's there, and so somebody kind of, I get the pandemic impacted some of those decisions artificially, but it just seems strange that some very smart people that control these big investment firms just made some really, really bad decisions about the size of that market. And I'd love to have been around some of the tables when all these things are made, because there's so many of them out there that have raised, they're not just raising 5 or 10 million, they're literally raising hundreds of millions on a very, very simple idea. And you just have to ask yourself, well, how did we ended up getting there?
Yeah, I think part of it is I think they over-indexed on the value of adding a screen to something and on the experience, right? So people, like I said, can always get, we're on a screen today. People can, there's a finite limit to how much you want to have that experience. And then it worked during the pandemic because you weren't seeing anybody. But the minute you see someone, that connection is so much deeper. I mean, Anthony, you and I have been chatting virtually for a while. And then when we met in person, it was like, boom, so much more valuable to do that. I think fitness and training is the same.
And like you said, Matthew, it's been around for so long. Think, okay, dumbbells, they're worth $40. Dumbbells that can kind of track my rep, $50 million. What? Doesn't make any sense. Like it just, there was no logic on the people that were making the decisions and pitching the concepts. And it was I think they were just uninformed, and shiny new things got attention and money, which I think is hopefully happening less and less.
I don't know a lot about that investment world, but my guess is that because of that, the number of fails that have probably happened, that there's got to be a swing in the opposite direction with investors'
Yeah.
willingness to put any money into the space. Would you say?
Big time. It's a crazy world out there with fitness, and it sucks because there's a lot of really smart founders that are these, we call them like second wave founders, that are building the next version of a product or an idea, and they're not in fitness, they're in wellness and health and longevity and food as medicine and nutrition. But these uninformed investors are saying, oh well, that's like Peloton, or oh that's like Tonal or whatever. And it's a bummer. We just raised more money for our fund as we invest in companies as well, because there's the I've never seen an industry where the numbers and the predictions of how big the market is, where the spend is, the consumer interest, how involved it is hockey stick growth, and the number of capital investments and the dollars coming in are on the massive downtrend. So it's hard time for founders right now, and the investment dollars are down, but it also leaves a really big opportunity for new investors, and I think angel investors. I know Mo, you're an investor in companies. I think people like that have huge opportunities if they know the space and they can add value and put money behind ideas.
What do you think about like, I suppose there's been a lot of money gone into developing things that normally you could never afford to develop. So whether that's on the software side or the hardware side or just the knowledge side, what do you think about if you have got money on the sidelines? Do you think that there's probably some real bargains for buying things at now a fraction of what they cost to develop, and then being able to build that into some kind of new version at a lot less cost than what it would normally take?
I think there is an opportunity here, but it's really going to come down to one, look, what drove a lot of the excess, I would say, in valuation and in these connected fitness companies in 2020, 2021 was access to capital. We were in a true bull market. Interest rates were nearly zero. Then the pandemic hit, and just money was just coming in. But people weren't spending money on experiences, so they were sitting on a lot of capital. And when you're sitting in your house, you're like, this is not a great experience. How can I make it better? So you saw Zoom have a crazy valuation. All these work from home or at home fitness had these really frothy valuations and investments coming in. I think that I think your point, Matthew and Anthony, they're going to be a lot more judicious on what happens next. And unfortunately, you might have a founder with a great idea that might not be getting the credit that they need to get or the attention that they need to get because now investors are going to be a lot more cautious. So I almost think that we're entering this era of an innovation lull because you're not going to see a lot of capital coming in. So maybe for the next 18 months or so, you see less capital injected into new and let's just call it higher risk ideas and more to stabilize existing organizations. But one exception for that, and I'm going to take us to the next block here, and my next flex is GLP-1. I mean, GLP-1 to me for this year is what ChatGPT was last year. So if you remember, ChatGPT came out with ChatGPT 3 in November of 2022 and kind of became the talk of 2023. To me, this year in our industry, it's really GLP-1 and the impact. It could be controversial, but the impact that Ozempic and other types of GLP-1 drugs have had to us, not just to our industry itself, but the broader impact it's going to have in other industries, it still feels like it's a little bit frothy. It still feels like people are getting incredibly excited about something when we still don't have all the data yet. We still don't have all the data yet. So, but to me, that's a big flex. It's a trend. I'm going to put it under this trend category for 2023. Anthony, any thoughts on 2023 trends that you've seen?
Yeah, for me, it was always outdoors, social fitness, group workouts, hiking, run groups, sunshine, all the stuff that we would talk and write about a ton, but it's really kind of hard to monetize from a business perspective. But you saw people spending time and getting the attention, and it was a passion. It kind of, I think it grew from COVID. You could be outside, you could do those things, you could spend the time and effort to go out and do them, and they weren't really expensive. But now you're seeing it just grow and grow. And in some areas, there is monetization around like trail running and gravel cycling and other things that Strava is interested in and the equipment sales for that. But generally, seeing people get back to what I used to love when we owned gyms, which was your fitness and your experience that you're spending your time on from a health perspective is matching up closely with your social side. Those are the same people you're spending time with, and you're organizing the group runs and the group rides, and you're doing the destination wellness and going away to these yoga retreats and these other things. You're really spending the few times that you can get away and mirroring that and doing that with wellness and health and fitness. So it's something that was grew in 2023, and I'm super passionate about it. Pickleball, sports, running, hiking. That's what I love to do for my fitness, and I think it's only going to grow in 2024.
Well, I'll give my view on 2023, and that's strength training. I think it's always been around, but certainly the pandemic maybe created more of a demand than was ever there before. A lot of the people, the operators that we speak to, business owners, are really seeing that shift where there's less demand for the cardio products, probably because people have been able to figure that out at home. They've brought a Peloton or a treadmill, or they've figured out a way to go out running. But the strength training category seriously increased. I was reading some articles about the searches from girls who lift on TikTok, and something like 10 or 11 billion searches for things like girls who lift. The searches on Google for weight training for women, and I think you've got the guys that have always done strength training, but there's certainly now a huge demand for weight training and strength training for women, which I don't think was there years ago. I think normally a lot of women generally saw strength training as something that would make them big and bulky, and wasn't generally what they wanted to do. But I think now, maybe through media and different things, it's something that has become a lot more popular. I think what it's also done this year is it's created a lot of challenges for people who run fitness facilities, and now you've got everybody trying to put. There's a Gold's Gym near me, and I think he's got something like 20 or 30 squat racks in there now. So they just can't get any more people on the squat racks, because if you think about it, people will stay on a treadmill 10 to 15 minutes. But now what you've got is you've got a couple of two or three girls or guys, they'll come and they'll bring their lunchbox and their camera, and they're on a squat rack for an hour to two. So it's creating a lot of challenges for operators. But I think that was probably my main one for 2023, and I could certainly see it continuing through the year ahead.
I really like that one, Matthew. And I was thinking about this too. I was reading an article recently. I think it might have been Good Life Fitness in Canada. I think has a lawsuit or something like that, where they're considering a policy or what to do with filming. And I think, look, a lot of the growth in why strength became what it is, and I'm a big fan of strength. I'm a runner, but strength really helps me stay strong and remain injury free. So I'm glad to see that, but I think social media and looking to your point, girls and guys lifting, getting stronger, also increasing their confidence, all the other benefits that come with strength training, unfortunately now also is impacting, let's just call it gym culture or gym etiquette. Almost like driving, you kind of know how to drive on roads, and there's certain gym etiquette that goes with it, right? Like, okay, you spend X number of minutes on a squat rack, or you could work in if someone else is on the squat rack. Hey, do you mind if I work in with you? But if you have a group of people working out for 90 minutes in one squat rack, you can't really do that. And also this idea of filming, which also think has grown up, like filming your workouts and posting about it, which is a great thing because it gets more people involved. But it also brings up a lot of privacy concerns and other issues, taking up space and all the other things that come with the growth of strength.
Mm.
Yeah, totally agree on strength. I think we've covered it like 4 or 5 times in the newsletter, and every time we did it was a new company tagging onto that. Orange Theory launched something, and whoever else launched the next strength thing, and they're adjusting to try to keep up. And with what you said, Mo, there's a guy named Joey Swole. He's on TikTok. He's funny. He just his whole brand is talking about how bad the gym etiquette is, and it's all about that. And every day there's a new video of some person not being a great person doing stuff like that, and it's usually the bodybuilding, strength training crowd that's doing it.
Well, when you think about it, though, I had this. We did a presentation a little while ago about this, and what certainly happened since the pandemic is you're bringing in a lot of people that weren't going to gyms that have been told through the media that look, you need to if you don't improve your health and fitness, you're done, and so there's certainly there's been certainly a lot of press that's I'm sure that's increased people's awareness and interest in health and fitness, and a lot of them have been going and seeking out gyms to do that in. So you've almost got the people that were there before that have always gone to fitness facilities and kind of figured out their own way and figured out the rules of the gym that they're in and how to interact with people. And then there's clearly been an influx of newer people that probably have got their education from TikTok or Instagram and that sort of stuff, but they've not been brought up probably like some of us have done through through years of going to gyms and being slapped around the head if you didn't do things right. And so now you've got this kind of like mix of people that are in the facilities. And I think a lot of cases the gyms are trying to figure out how to accommodate all those different types of clients as well, because the facilities are exactly the same facilities as they were when they closed down before the pandemic, and now they're evolving to catch up with the trends. But there's a real mix in terms of the things that people want to do, and then the type of people that are going in there for at the top end of the age group and at the younger end of the age group. So I'm not surprised to see that there's a lot of issues now that people are dealing with when you combine the impact of things like technology and filming and phones, which also weren't probably quite as prevalent back then as well.
Yeah, definitely a crazy time. I'm glad I don't go to a big box gym.
Well, we're going to move on to the prediction section now. We're going to go through the same big tech, small to medium sized companies, and then general trends. And I'm going to start this one with you, Anthony. So, predictions for 2024 in the big name, big tech section.
Yeah, I think it goes back on what Mo was saying on the GLP-1 stuff. I think that's going to be the convergence of a lot of big healthcare names. A lot of when you see the whole body MRI and what's happening in GLP-1 and the amount of money and time that is getting spent on what we call consumerized wellness. Roe is launching GLP-1 and Hims is launching GLP-1 and other stuff. But what comes from that? And then Forward just raised all of that money for their new kind of, I guess you would call them clinics, and Lifetime is launching
Who is that?
longevity clinics. Forward
Who is
Health,
that, Anthony? Forward.
oh yeah, Forward Health. They just raised what was it, 100 million, and they're launching more centers and Lifetime is launching longevity clinics, and it came out today or yesterday that Exponential just bought a weight loss clinic. So it's all of these big brands and this money being spent on consumerized healthcare and going straight to the consumer with TRT and heart and hormone replacement therapy and weight loss drugs. And really, I think for me, I look at this in a very negative light because I've actually gone through some of those, DTC brands, not to name them. And I'm at the time I went through their onboarding and I was 31 years old. And they're like, "Oh, you should be on TRT." And you're like, "I definitely should not be on TRT at 31 years old. This is insanity." But sure, you just raised $10 million. Tell me what you think. So yeah, I think that all of those big healthcare focused brands either being bought by fitness brands, having fitness brands launch these types of products, or more importantly, them coming in and just stepping over the entire fitness industry and going straight to consumer with these specific offerings that are prescription or close to prescription based peptides and all the other things. And I think it's going to dominate 2024. And it's not just going to be one topic. It's not going to be just weight loss drugs, everything else. It's going to be complete, you know, human optimization drugs that were not really available for everybody else that is going to be drastically overprescribed and available.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that, Anthony. And I think, yeah, to your point, yeah, Exponential just announced this week that they're going to be partnering, actually acquired a brand that's focused on wellness. To your point, everyone's doing this. I think they have to do that because when you look at how often you go to your gym, and how much data they have on you, the gym knows more about your health and wellness today and are probably better served to focus on prevention than your GP, right? GPs are, in a lot of ways, have become obsolete. I mean, how many of us on this call today have a GP, right? I mean, we certainly don't, because most of the time you go to either urgent care or you go to a specialist. That's gonna be very specific to what you're focused on or what your issue is, and that's why I think my prediction in 2024 is in the same vertical. It's in healthcare. And what I think might happen, and I think there's a very high probability that it happened, is one of the big tech companies, whether it be Amazon or Apple, is going to start to offer their own health insurance programs to consumers. And I think it might be Amazon first because Amazon, one, has the infrastructure and they've proven out this model before where let's look at Amazon Web Services today, which is their most profitable initiative. They first launched Amazon Web Services as an internal tool and then opened it up to the public. And now it is the largest cloud platform on the planet. Amazon started self-insuring its employees and self-funding its own employees in the last decade. And when you pair that with they know what you're buying, they know what you're eating. If you are using an Amazon device, they kind of know about your health as well. They could really create optimized insurance plans and outdo the traditional insurance companies. The same is true for Apple. I mean, we just talked about Apple Health in the last section, all the data that Apple is collecting on you. When you look at how actuarial tables are built for offering you insurance rates, and look, we're in the process of switching insurance, and it is not easy switching insurance companies. It's very expensive. The cost of insurance goes up every single year, and the services that you get for it are less and less. Well, Apple is now going to have the largest collection of data on your health and wellness. They could build very accurate actuarial tables, and I don't think it's a far fetch from them to be able to offer their own insurance as well. So that's my big flex from big tech for 2024. Matthew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're sort of very aligned, building on both what both of you said. Really, I guess I've seen this, this biohacking thing's been around for a while, and I guess that's kind of like its own little niche. But when depending on how you label it, I think there's certainly seeing this evolution from a fitness based industry where you would go and you would exercise and you would probably get some basic nutrition to more of this now holistic health, which fringes on what Anthony was talking about, having these medical treatments. Because if you think about, if you just purely think about it from a business perspective, then you've got access to a number of, quite a decent membership. You've made a big investment in a bricks and mortar facility. And the challenge that the fitness industry has is retention. And so the model, even though some businesses have now relaxed on the contracts and they don't tie you in for as long, and some people are offering month to month and that kind of thing, and dropping the membership prices down. It's really figuring out how a way you can generate more revenue per member in a way that they're interested in continuing it. And we know most people don't really like going to a gym. They don't use it very, very regularly. So there's definitely flaws in that business model. Whereas if you could combine fitness and a regular uh, visit at your gym, for whether it's a semaglutide or something that they're committed or required to do on a regular basis, then it transforms the valuation of a business significantly. And my guess is that's probably what people like Lifetime and we talked about the exponential news, but it, if I was to start a business, finding a way to, in the right way, to package those two things together would be a dream, really, because you're just hooking someone in a way that's quite difficult to do in anything else that I'm aware of in the fitness industry.
I think, I mean, it was not too long ago, Amazon announced already doing primary care. I think more than insurance, they're all, and I think this is a big negative, everyone's going to move towards a version of offering the services and then have it be available through insurance, but more importantly, cash pay. Like Row and Hims and all, they're going cash pay. They don't want to deal with your insurance. They will and they can, but it makes so much sense for everybody to be offering these services as a high-end cash pay. And same thing with, Life Force and hormone replacement therapy and everything else. And Amazon is going to do it. I doubt Apple will risk their brand to offer these types of services, but I think Amazon would in a second. But in the end, it's going to be, I don't think it's going to impact the fitness industry in a negative way, because as you were saying, Matthew, if I'm going to the gym and I am losing weight and I am getting stronger and my testosterone, if I'm taking all these and I'm some version of a juiced up human, and depending on which way you're looking at it, I'll probably be in the gym more. So there's been people talking about, oh, it's going to impact the industry and you need to be prepared. They'll be working out more. They'll be doing it. Just because they're losing weight doesn't mean they're not going to work out. But I just think it's a bad approach overall, just because should people in their 20s and 30s who haven't tried other options, taking these weight loss drugs, taking hormone replacement, getting access to peptides and other things, this just doesn't seem smart to me from a health perspective. But I do think it's going to happen across the board. I think you're both super right on everything.
I guess from your side, Mo, like you imagine having access to some of this data where and combining AI with it, like being able to predict, once you've been profiled, being able to predict what other things, complementary stuff that you need. As you say, you're probably going to be these juiced up human beings going to be on a number of different chemicals, but combining data with pharmaceuticals is is an interesting future waiting for all of us, I'm sure.
No, it really is. And look, ultimately, it comes down to improving your chances of a positive outcome and making that journey shorter, right? So if we could say you're going to achieve whatever that health or wellness journey is, even if it's by a 20% improvement, um, depending on, I guess, on what the side effects are. But if we can use data and AI to better prescribe activity, behavior, nutrition supplementation, that's a win. And I think that that is something that we're going to see more and more companies start incorporating next year.
Well, let's move on to the mid-size companies. I think we've just done the large companies, haven't we? So we're on the mid-size now. I'm sure there's definitely a lot of overlap in between the two. But what are your start with you, Mo? What are your predictions on the small to medium size business predictions?
Well, I'm going to pick up where I left off, which really is, I think AI is going to be adopted by most growth-oriented companies. So you're going to have a segment of companies that are going to be scared of incorporating new technologies, especially in the gym, in recommendations, in analyzing data. But a lot of growth-oriented companies, I can even look at our portfolio brands, and you look at the ones that are truly trying to be innovative and implement the next progression of wellness evolution, they're all using some form of AI. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, the cost and the ease of implementation have both come down, right? So those typically have been very high prices of entry, but they now come down where it's made a lot of that accessible to small and mid-market industry players. So I really think that we're going to see AI be used to help improve health outcomes, help improve recommendations, and ultimately, really get the best bang for your buck in not only the amount of money you spend on your wellness, but also time as well. So that's my flex prediction for 2024.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think mine's going to be the exact opposite of that. I think we've spent so much time over the past few years with fitness and tech. And what has that gotten us? A lot of overhyped and misguided stuff. So I think we're going to see a massive growth in the simple and effective offline, simplistic workout approaches and equipments and other things that you're going to see. It's going to be more barbells, more dumbbells, more regular programs, more, I think if you think what's happened in what would be like the Joe Rogan crowd or the Cam Hanes or the other types of people that are in that space, what is it? It's simple and effective fitness, and it's less wearables and less tech and less other things. Yes, companies might be using them. I think most totally right on all that, but I think the end consumer is going to have a growth in that. And with that is, you know, being, something that it's going to be hard, similar to my last thing with the outdoor fitness. It's somewhat hard to monetize those things, but I think from what we're seeing trend wise on search and data, there's going to be a really big growth in the consumer looking for the simple side of things and less tech, less AI, less connected screens, less devices overall. And you're starting to see that now, and I think it's only going to grow.
With Mo with a worried look on your
Well,
face.
yeah, I was a little bit perplexed. I wasn't expecting that, but I actually agree. And I think, look, it's the same thing we're talking about here is that the equipment itself and the experience itself is going to really get untapped, right? I truly believe that. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to wear a wearable or that they're not going to be following a program that's generated through AI. But I think, no, I do agree with Anthony in that the untapped, I'm a very kind of untapped fitness person. I use dumbbells, barbells. I run outside. I run on my bike. So, and I could only see that trend growing. Matthew, any thoughts from your end in this block for 2024?
Yeah, I would kind of reference a little bit what Anthony said, but in a slightly different way, and I'll relate it to people that own gyms basically. And I think when you look at how people are designing gyms in general, they're still using a fairly out of date view of the consumer. And why do I say that? Well, I travel I get to work out in lots and lots of gyms, and there are some fantastic forward thinking operators out there. But the majority of the ones that you go into still seem to be providing a very similar experience to what they did 5 to 10 years ago. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at what people are doing in facilities, so I was in I've been in a couple. I did a recent trip around Europe, and I went to the East Coast over the last few weeks and got into as many gyms as possible. And when you look at what the people are doing that work out in the gym, it's quite interesting. And I'm sure this will resonate with a few of you. But what you see is you've got guys, particularly women, and they'll go into the gym and they'll collect a few bits of equipment. So they'll collect some kettlebells and some dumbbells and some bands and a mat, and they'll create a little spot somewhere in the facility. And they've probably got somebody that they follow. I remember I chatted to a lady and asked her what she was watching and why she was watching it. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I follow so and so on YouTube." And so what they're doing is that they go into the gym and they're borrowing some of the equipment, and they're looking at people on YouTube or whatever, and they're on their earphones and they're creating this mini experience within a facility. But in most cases, the areas that have got these dumbbells are you'd imagine the dumbbell rack in front of a load of mirrors. So you've got these long dumbbell racks and you've got these benches next to each other, and that's the way you see a free weight area. But in a lot of cases, you have people that have never been into a gym before, or you've got a lot of females that don't want to lay on a bench next to some big guy in a vest who's pressing 150 pounds. And so I think what I would predict for the year ahead is I think you're going to have to start seeing gyms either cater for a specific audience and really do a great job at laying it out and designing it so that it meets the needs for that type of client, or bigger gyms that will have different areas for people of different abilities so that they can create their own little space and have their own workout experience. But definitely in a lot of cases, the gyms are not really understanding sort of the consumer and how they used to work out at home, and now they're coming into a gym, and they're kind of left to design the gym on their own as opposed to professionally creating an experience that that meets the needs for some of these new consumers that are going in there.
I mean, to me, Matthew, that sounds like an opportunity. And to serve that market, I do agree. I think that with the growth of strength, you have a lot of people, which I don't think is a bad thing, but following influencers and things that they're finding on YouTube. But that doesn't take into account what's going on with their own goals and their own lives. It's going to get them to a certain point, but it's like following a cookie cutter program. So I do think there's an opportunity to bring in all of our mid-industry predictions together. And I think, Anthony, you mentioned earlier that there's been a growth of strength even in boutique studios. You mentioned Orange Theory. I think even Nike has a strength component into their studio as well. So I agree. I think this is a trend that we're going to see grow in 2024.
And that's like you just talked about one that really stuck with me, which has been a crazy thing to see, Alpha Land. I don't know if you paid attention to what they've built down in, I think it's in
Yeah.
Texas, but this like massive facility with 20 different types of modalities and trainings and millions of dollars spent on equipment and facilities. And I think you're going to see smaller version of that because not everybody can build a type of fit facility like that. But it's touching on what all of you have just said. There's, people are really going to find their homes and go towards the really cool, specific types of trainings they're looking for. And Alpha Land is a crazy example to see what they've built. It's wild. I've never been, but I've seen so many videos and photos of what's going on there, and it's crazy.
I think if you look at that idea, and this is something I've been looking at, you imagine a lot of the gyms that are around at the moment. So there's I'll raise names that people know, but Snap or Anytime Fitness, and these are smaller footprint gyms or in different locations, and they kind of cater for everybody. But if you think about the Alpha Land idea, as you said, and in a smaller concept, there's probably an opportunity for a very successful chain that's not yet developed that just purely does a micro version of that and has all the stuff that you need for a particular demographic. I could see that being pretty appealing for a lot of people. We're on to the last segment now, which is general trends for 2024. And I'll start off with you on this one then, Anthony.
Yeah, for me, it kind of touches on what I said last time, which it's this type of crowd that you're seeing develop around health and fitness. And for me, it's mental health becoming mental fitness. I think we first wrote about it over a year ago now in terms of the mental fitness term, if not more. And it's resilience and doing the hard things and getting out of your comfort zone and getting offline and getting away from tech. And obviously we see cold plunges and the hot and cold contrast therapy and all of that, but even more so you're seeing with rucking and like what GoRuck's doing, what Michael Easter is doing, the crowds around Joe Rogan and others, and the types of people that are, the David Goggins of the world and the massive scale that these people are hitting. And it's really bringing people back to what I experienced in the military, as well as what I think fitness was a while ago, which is not boutique and cool and fancy and, a version of comfort fitness. It's more the nitty gritty basics of health and wellness and going towards the doing the hard things, do the hard thing. So it's been
What's
fun to see
rucking?
so far. Rucking is, putting a lot of weight on your back in a backpack and walking, running, hiking really far with it. So I do it all the time. I have one of the Go Ruck packs. I think mine's like 60 pounds. So getting that in, and so Go Ruck was started by a Navy SEAL and no Navy SEAL, sorry, Green Beret and Jason McCarthy, and that version of uncomfortable, hard, resilient, do the hard thing type of fitness is really going to continue to take off.
Yeah, like it. Mo?
Yeah, so I'm going to take that. I love what you said, Anthony. And I think that, yes, we're going to see this again, de-tech in fitness and just going out there and doing the hard things. But I've been reading a lot about the other side, which is a focus on wellness and
Yeah.
longevity. And in fact, I don't think it's that people are looking for the easy way out. I think people recognize that you need to sweat. You've got to be pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone in order to grow. But I do see a trend away, especially I think next year, from hit and high performance. Right. So when you look at what we're in this era of I want to be at the top of my Peloton leaderboard, or I'm going to go to Orange Theory Fitness, 5 days a week and do this hit based workout, into a focus more around I just want to feel good. I want to feel great. I want to be able to go rucking with you on the weekend. I want to be able to do the things, walk and not feel like I'm in pain, and really focus on how can I extend my life? How can I live into my 70s and 80s and even 90s and live good years, right? Live the years that I have now, in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, feel great in this time, being able to do the things that I want to do with my kids, with my friends, and on the weekends, but also extend my lifespan. And I think given the education, especially during the pandemic, how people got really dialed in and focused on their health, their wellness, seeing the impact that being unhealthy could have on you. I think finally now in 2024, there's going to be this pullback on really high intensity training, and I'll put CrossFit in that category,
Mhm.
um, and focus more on wellness, longevity, getting more sunshine, doing more things with other people, a focus on mindfulness. I think that's going to be my flex trend for 2024.
I'm on the lines of what you said, Mo. Maybe it's my age. I'm not totally sure if that's the case. But I think you've got people like Huberman and Peter Attia, I think his name is, and I think there's some really interesting people that are out there now doing podcasts and becoming getting a lot of traction that are providing people with an alternative way to look at their life and how long they can live and the quality that they can live and I guess getting people to imagine a slightly different future. And if you think about the health, I'm from the I'll call it the health club space, health club industry. In general, most of the concepts have been targeted for a younger demographic because I guess they've generally been a more interesting part of the market. And I've not seen very many models that have been looking at a slightly older age group, 40s, 50s, and beyond. But when you look at the spending power, a lot of cases, as people get a bit older, their kids grow up, they tend to have a lot more disposable income, and they tend to be prepared to pay for health or to spend and invest a lot more on them living longer and looking better than probably what they would be prepared to invest when they're younger. So I think the demographics of a business for the 40, 50, 60 year olds, I think makes a lot of sense. I think some of the research that's now coming out about things like strength training and reaction training and things that you can do so you can move when you're 40, 50, 60, like you did when you're 20s and 30s. I think a lot of that is coming out now. I think you're starting to see a lot more information around things like alcohol that was sort of almost like what everybody did in the 80s and 90s, and now that's changing, and people are really being a lot more aware about what they put into their bodies and that. So I think I'm not sure what you would call that as a category, but I would sort of probably go along with what you said, Mo. This sort of longevity brand of health and wellness, and which includes some of the things that we said earlier about. I guess when people are in that age, they are more likely to have more of a need for some sort of hormone replacement therapy because they've probably outlived every their natural ability to produce that sort of stuff. So I think it's more in line with where those people are in life, and I think that's certainly a space that I can see becoming a lot more visible next year and beyond, and one that I'm certainly going to take a very close look at as well.
Movement mobility too is like the different versions of how do you, along with what Mo is saying, which is so true. It's funny. Our views are what we think are both opposite ends of the spectrum. I think they're both going to grow drastically.
Yeah.
And it's on the one that you guys were both talking about is movement mobility. People finding ways to not just, I'm not going to even care about as much working out and what my lift is or what my strength is I'm going to make sure I do the movements and mobility in version of what Kelly Starrett is teaching, what pliability is teaching, and some of these options out there. I know for me, every morning I have a Andrew Huberman routine of get up, get outside, drink my water, don't drink caffeine for the first 60 minutes, and then go and do a movement mobility routine. And that's fitness for that version of the day for me. So yeah, I love both of those things you guys are talking about. And I think there's what can honestly be a cap to everything we've talked about is there's so many more niche categories of training and versions of what you want, and they're all big businesses, and you can now find your version of that. And for me, like, I love that version of optimization and health span and feel better. And then at night I want to go and do the ruck and do the crazy workout as well. And I can find both of those groups on so different opposite ends, and want to be that. And for people I know that are looking for a version of health span extension and feeling better and working out, but in their way, and they'll go find a person who probably has millions of followers there too. So these what used to be very individualistic categories and small categories are now massive opportunities. And you'll find a version of that with a person that is doing it and they're an expert and they have a huge community that you can go join, which I think is super cool in the industry. Is you can find your area and find lots and lots of people that are also looking for that same community and area of stuff that you want to be in.
Yeah, definitely. Before I ask, I've got a final question that I want to get from both of you. Before I do that, Anthony, just for people who may not have heard about you, just give us a little bit of an overview of some of the businesses that you guys are involved in case people want to search you out even more, and if they're not subscribed to any of your newsletters.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Bit Insider, it is newsletter, podcast, jobs board, news, research information, can access to data. We want to be there as a resource for you if you want to work in the industry, find information, connect to people, kind of get to the community. So think of it as like a B2B publication. We also own Well To Do, which is a version of that, but based out of Europe and the UK. We have an awesome team in Europe that covers this international news, which is an ever growing place. And then we also have a fund, Fit Capital. We invest in health and wellness companies, pre-seed, seed stage. We've made 30 investments. We're about to make a lot more, and then from there, there's a lot of services. So if you want to hire in the industry, we have a recruiting firm. If you want to work with us on some of these trends and other things, we have a little bit of a consulting group. And in general, it's just really trying to be the destination for anyone that wants to be in this space, invest in this space, work in it, be around it.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Well, to wrap up, we've talked about a number of different subjects, and it seems as though we all come from very different parts of the industry and very different backgrounds, but there's definitely quite a few synergies. And what I'd like to ask, just as we wrap up, is Anthony, have you got any final thoughts about what was said, and maybe a perspective on the conversation that summarizes what you think is what do you think we got coming up for 2024?
Yeah, I think honestly, everything that was said here today is such a there's such a big opportunity within each one. And 2024 is going to be truly a new era in the industry for us. It's no longer fueled by COVID, and it's no longer the old school brick and mortar. We've gotten beyond that. We've gotten beyond the COVID waves and ups and downs. And now it's a new era of really good businesses with really informed people building quality products that have an actual place in the industry are going to shine. And there's no more hype or kind of hidden funding or opportunity to hide behind. And then what I was saying earlier, there's going to be really what used to be looked at as small, random things that are now becoming true, full-fledged opportunities and trends in the industry that people are going to want to be a part of. And just like most other categories of the world, you can find your place, and all of these and more are big opportunities. So I think you're going to see also more people move into the industry. I get emails and pitches and messages and decks every day from somebody at Instagram and Meta and Google and Apple, and they're saying, I used to be a developer at Apple and I used to do this at Instagram or Meta, and I was this person at this healthcare company. I want to work in the health and wellness industry. I want to build in the health and wellness industry. And similarly, we're seeing family offices and big names that they are saying, I spend my personal time in health and wellness. I'm not going to steak dinners and whiskey. I'm going to do cold plunges and runs for my kind of meetings. I want to invest in industry. So there's going to be a ton more of attention and money and people building in the space as well, and it will not look the same in the next 24 months.
Mm. Mo?
Yeah, look, I think we are at the intersection of fitness, wellness, and healthcare right now, which is why you're getting the attention from big tech. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation happening in that category. But for the traditional spaces that we've been in and things that we've been talking about, I agree. We've been saying a lot of the same things in that there's a lot of kind of de-tech happening. There's a lot of simplification and a lot of lowering in friction. People just want to go out and do the thing and have fun doing it and enjoy doing it and not feel like that they're killing themselves while they're getting in better shape. And I think what you've learned, and we've certainly learned throughout the last decade, is you don't need to live either a very restrictive lifestyle in order to feel great. So more of the larger population is getting educated on that. And I think we're going to see that trend continue in 2024.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I think for a lot of companies that have been through the pandemic, and probably less about the ones that opened afterwards, but the ones that were around before and managed to get through it. I think it's been a tough time for anyone, whether you're in the consumer space, the B2B, whether you're investing. I think we've all had some very interesting lessons, and a lot of time you can sort of think, well, is there any light at the end of a tunnel? But I think conversations like this, when you take a step away from your business, is you understand, like, if you can, as you mentioned, Anthony, if you've got a good model, if you've got some realistic projections about where you're going, you're running it in the right way. There's certainly not a shortage of things to go after, and untapped opportunities to evolve the business that's within, that could be, just a few circles away from your core business. I think it's just being able to stick it out and get involved in that next thing, which seems as though there's this whole new wave of things that are likely to happen in the very near future. At least that's what I'm hoping, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, look, guys, thank you very much for your time today. It was a very interesting and valuable conversation. I certainly learned a lot about it, and I hope the listeners do. If you did find it interesting, then please share it with anybody that you know. The more people you share this with, the more we're able the more content we're able to create, and the more of these that we're able to do. So thank you very much for listening to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast.
Thank you so much for being on, Anthony. And yeah, let's recap this in a year and see how many of these we got right.
No, I love it. Thank you guys so
Yeah.
much, and really appreciate all the insights and the time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.